guys, welcome back to another Opinion Overhaul episode. So, yesterday we sort of covered the whole idea of the legality behind the refugee ban. And we sort of touched on some social aspects of it. I think you guys should definitely go check that out. If you haven't yet, go to our previous episode. You guys will enjoy it, and it will give you a lot of context for this episode. For this episode, I sort of want to concentrate on... We've complained a lot about this whole thing. I want to give some solutions. So, in order to make an amendment to this so-called refugee ban, let's sort of pick it apart. What are your specific disagreements with the ban, Christian? We sort of covered in the last episode, but I just sort of want you to retouch on what are your specific things that you don't like about the ban.
Well,
where to start?
This is a loaded question, but I think the key takeaways from what my investigation has kind of yielded in regards to what is wrong with this ban is, off the top of my head, two things. First is the indefinite ban from Syria is not okay. Because these are refugees. These are people who they have almost nowhere to go. These people have had their families killed, their homes destroyed, down to rubble. These guys have nothing left. And Trump wants to say absolutely not, to accept absolutely none of these people. That is ludicrous. That's insane. If you want to hunker down and increase your standards of who gets to come in and who doesn't get to come into the country from that area, that's fine. But if you're about to tell me that we're going to say no to every single person indefinitely, that's where I take issue. The second thing is assuming that this ban should be put in place in the first place, which is questionable. If it is to be put in place, why the hell did he not add Pakistan, Afghanistan, and Saudi Arabia to this list? Saudi Arabia is one of the leading state sponsors of terrorism.
I agree with that. Now, but Saudi Arabia is also our biggest trading partner in the Middle East. We do something like close to $100 billion in trade with them. And there's this whole thing that everyone's throwing around that the Obama administration created these 7 countries. It's not necessarily that he said that people from those countries should be banned. He sort of did it was a blanket statement in one of his executive orders where he came out and said that these were countries of concern. For instance, Iran, Sudan, and Syria are on the U.S. Department list for state sponsors of terrorism. The main issue, why I actually don't know why Pakistan and Afghanistan were on it.
It's unbelievable. It makes no sense.
It doesn't. We were at war with them.
I think it's 15 of the 19 hijackers on the 9/11 attacks were from Saudi Arabia.
Something like that, yeah.
Saudi Arabia is a huge sponsor of terrorism, Wahhabism, all of that. It's insane that we're even, regardless of the fact that we do trade with them, which we really shouldn't be buddying up to people who have grievous human rights violations in the first place. Regardless of that, these people, if we're assuming that we should be barring people with this ban, if anyone makes the list, it's Saudi Arabia. Of all the countries on the planet, I mean, we're talking the worst offender here. And you want to leave off Saudi Arabia? You want to leave off Pakistan, the country that hit Saddam Hussein? Or Osama bin Laden, my bad. Osama bin Laden, and you want to leave off the UAE is another one.
That is a big one.
It's unbelievable. What is going on? Why would you not bar those countries if you're going to... Why would you throw Somalia on the list, but not the UAE? Why would you throw Libya on the list, but not Saudi Arabia? It makes no sense.
Okay, we've already established that I'm not the biggest fan. That I love immigration, but I'm more hesitant than you are. Mm-hmm. We've already established that. But my thoughts on the whole thing is that Trump's sort of taken a middle ground on it. In order to protect the U.S. from his perspective, he should have taken all those countries into account. Mm-hmm. Saudi Arabia, maybe not, but you're completely right in what you're saying. Now, it sort of, at this point, seems like a curtain with a bunch of holes in it. Mm-hmm. And he either should have done it more targeted in the sense of he should have pinpointed exact countries like Syria. He could have just pinpointed Syria and I think Afghanistan. And that would have been pinpointing it, and it wouldn't have caused a whole outcry. He wouldn't have been banning 15% of the population. If he was going to take that extreme, he could have just pinpointed a few countries instead of taking 7.
But what's the difference between 7 countries and 3?
You're upsetting a lot more people. A lot. And okay, it's obviously going to cause controversy.
Listen, the principle of the matter remains. If you are going to ban people, I don't think if you're going to ban people who are in desperate need of a place to take them in as refugees, if you're going to do that, and if you stoop that low, and you're going to say it's a matter of national security, why the hell? What difference does it make if it's 3 or 7, first of all, or 7 or 10? And second, where is the justification for national security? We already been in the last podcast yesterday. We went over the fact that if you really care about the safety of your citizens, focus on the gun violence, inner city shootings, gang violence. All of this stuff is far more likely to affect Americans than any terrorist activity. So, if you are going to take the stance that we should bar immigration the way Trump's doing it in the first place, add those countries. Add Saudi Arabia. Add Pakistan. Add the UAE. Those countries, Afghanistan. Those countries should be on the list if there's a list in the first place.
So what stance are you taking, more or less?
If the ban is in place, if we are taking that as our springboard and we are working based off of that assumption, more.
I see that those are the two extremes, more pinpointed or more extreme. If he is going to take this whole stance where he wants to protect American people and he wants to run with that, not saying that's exactly the case is what's going on. He should have done more. It should have been more comprehensive. This just seems more it was just thrown out, not at the last second, but to paraphrase or to exaggerate, I guess, just thrown out at the last second. Now, from there, I sort of want to touch on, we've talked about our complaints with it.
Right.
Now, that's one whole issue in itself. In my eyes, it's not the biggest issue. In my eyes, it's more of how he executed it. So, he let it out on a Friday afternoon, then went dark for the entire weekend, had Sean Spice, the press secretary, who I think's a complete idiot. Every time he goes out, he just spews a bunch of lies. And Trump on Twitter, he went dark for the entire weekend. Other than that, pretty much the entire East Coast went into chaos.
So what would you have done differently?
Now, not rushed into it. We did talk about a little bit in the last podcast that it shouldn't have been the focus of his first week is to start that ban. He did do it temporarily, so it wasn't like he was running into it in the sense where he was just making a sweeping comment where he was just wanting to ban every single Muslim on the planet indefinitely. It was a temporary, but it seemed like he sort of rushed into it. None of the American people knew what it was about. Paul Ryan, apparently the only time Paul Ryan found out about it was when he was watching it on the news the same time everyone else did.
Right.
In order to get everyone on board with a topic that touchy, and executive orders themselves are supposed to be like outside of the, you know what I mean? Outside of the government.
No, outside of Congress.
Outside of the Congress. Yeah, outside of the Congress, outside of the judiciary system in the sense where it's just the Trump administration really making the executive order. But something this touchy, I'm not saying it should go through Congress because it probably wouldn't have been passed, especially in that short of time. But somebody should have been told, and the public should have been given the option to give their 2 cents.
But if the public was informed about that, think about this from Trump's perspective, right? You've seen his tweets recently where he said, something along the lines of the longer that this ban is going to remain lifted, is more opportunity for the bad guys, the ISISes of the world to sneak people in. So if you're talking from Trump's perspective, right, you don't want to put this off. You don't want to inform people because then that could provide an opportunity for ISIS or any bad apples out there to sneak in and infiltrate the country during that moment of debate.
Yeah, well,
so
I think Trump would do this again and again. What I'm saying is what should have been done.
Right, but I'm taking issue
not
with
what
your
Trump would have
solution
been done.
No, that's fair, but I'm taking issue with. All right, that's a fair point in regards to that. In regards to the fact that Trump would not have done that.
Trump would have done the exact same thing. He doesn't give a crap.
All right, but then I would argue, as Trump would argue in this case, where if you used to postpone and put it off for debate, then you're defeating the purpose. People are going to sneak in.
That's a completely valid
assuming
point
that
as
people
well.
are sneaking in, which I don't think is the case. But I'm trying to be rational here. Trying to play devil's advocate, and I completely disagree with that method of you want to throw it on the public. The executive order is supposed to be quick, fast, probably a little dirty every now and then to get your agenda across, and that's not the way to do it. Putting this out in the public sphere for debate is only going to run against you.
And I think it would, and maybe that should have been what happened. Then he could have... How he put it out and what he put out was not the best for anyone. He could have delivered the exact same message with a few tweaks, and the grand majority of people would have accepted it. I feel that by doing it this way, without telling anyone, is the reason there was so much upset, so much controversy. I mean, We didn't even hear when Obama decided to restrict immigration from Iran back in 2012, I think it was. We didn't even hear of that, and that we could blame that on the media being biased or whatever. But I just think it was more he did it in such a way where it was less controversial.
I just don't think. I think the reason it was so controversial, aside from the fact that it's a terrible idea, is also the fact that everyone's out to get Trump. So the reason it wasn't as controversial for Obama, the reason no one knew about the fact that Obama did this until Trump did it, not the same thing obviously, but it's to some degree, is that the media they're pulling a Bush era hawkish stance on the president, where they are looking for any slip up possible to pounce. And the second they slip up, they're right on him. I'm not saying that's necessarily good or bad.
But that's Trump's fault for allowing that even to be a possibility.
It's Trump's fault in the fact that he said the stupidest crap, during his campaign. So yeah, it's his fault in that regard. But let's deal with the cards we're dealt here. Okay, let's assume that the media already hates him. You have to understand going into something that's controversial that you are under a magnifying glass. If you're Trump, you are under a magnifying glass, and that's the case. You say, it's Trump's fault because he got the media against him in the first place. Yeah, but that was a year in the making, year plus in the making. So let's deal with it now. You have to take that into account when you're making some wide, overarching, sweeping legislative, or not legislative because it's not through Congress, but a law essentially of sorts that will be that controversial. I mean, did he really not think that people would think this is not a Muslim ban? He talked about it multiple times on the campaign.
He tried to ban he asked for the ban of all Muslims.
It's ridiculous. But listen, we're complaining again. We gotta get back to solutions. Your solution of putting it out in the public sphere for debate, I'm not sold on.
This is after the fact that he's made the whole thing. I'm not even specifically talking about the solutions in regard to the context and the contents of the ban. It's just more the execution.
Okay, so you would have executed it with a more drawn-out debate, involve more people, talk to Congress, Paul Ryan,
and it could have been edited from then, so it comes out with a less controversial. Not saying that he has to bargain 50-50 with the American people. He's the president, and he's somewhat in his right to lay out an executive order that bans immigration to a certain extent. We talked about last episode how it was unconstitutional in many regards. How he did it. And the context of his campaign and everything, it becomes very apparent that it's unconstitutional and it does become a Muslim ban. So is yours, if let's say the executive order is already given out,
right?
Do you even have a better way in which Trump could have better executed it?
Yeah, two things. Add the actually risky countries. So I'm saying Syria is obviously a risky country, given that's where ISIS is, along with Iraq and all that. But add the other risky countries. Add Pakistan, who sheltered the number one most wanted man on the planet against what they claimed to be our allies, which was, we were supposed to be allies with Pakistan. We sent them military-grade helicopters and sent them support and all that stuff. They claimed to be our allies, and they hid one of the number one leading terrorist, one most wanted criminal on the planet, right? So that country's got to be on the list. Saudi Arabia, state-sponsored terrorism, on the list. Afghanistan, that's where Al-Qaeda was based out of for a decade plus. That country goes on the list. I mean, you can add so many more countries and probably get rid of some other... Somalia, what the hell is Somalia doing on the list? Are you kidding me?
I think Somalia is like a hotbed for terrorism, but I don't think they're immigrating. I don't think they're... Is
it anti-U.S.? Are we running raids to the degree that we're running raids and intelligence operations in Somalia? Are we running operations in Somalia to the same degree that we're running in Syria or Afghanistan? Are you kidding me? Come on.
If we were talking about that, Libya too, I mean, they're in complete chaos right now, but it's not really organized at this point. It's more...
The U.S. didn't help with that. Well, we're not going to aid in the Civil War and then we bomb his palace. Give me a break. But the point is, if we are assuming there should be a ban the right countries. It's ridiculous.
The right ones. So
the right countries.
So the amount's fine with you, and
yeah.
If we're saying there should be a ban.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I have to look into the 7 countries in more detail to claim that we should remove some of them. But at the very least, you should add in Saudi Arabia. You should add in Pakistan. All those countries.
Now, Trump sort of come out and explained away why it's these only 7 countries and why it's not the countries you said. By not explaining. So
how does that make sense?
So he comes out every single time he goes on for an interview, he gets asked the question. And his response is always, I don't like telling people my plans. That's what the Obama administration did, and look, he created ISIS. So he sort of wants to keep it classified, is where I think he's getting.
It's like when he was running for office, and like, what's your plan to defeat ISIS? He's like, if I told you my plan, then they're going to know.
Exactly.
Stupidest thing ever.
Do you think that's more of a crutch, or there's there's nothing behind it, or
that's a Trumpism? Do I think that there's some grand strategy behind that? No, I just don't think he has a good justification. You'd be really hard to find a good justification. Now, if you want to take the stance that, hey, the President of the United States has every right to restrict immigration, fine. And because of that, he has every right to protect us from national security threats through his immigration powers, fine. All right, let's take that as a starting point. Is this the way you do it? No. Yeah. So we're talking about solutions here, and we were operating within the paradigm that the ban should be put in place. And I said, if I were doing it, my solution, the way I would have executed it is to add on the right countries. And the other thing which I hadn't mentioned is an indefinite ban on Syrian refugees. I think I have mentioned, but I have to emphasize it. That has to go. If you want to temporarily bar countries, I can kind of see it, because the whole justification is we're temporarily banning them so that we can up our vetting process.
Yeah. No,
I get that.
I agree with that too.
But not only do I disagree with that, even though I get it, because our vetting process is already ridiculously hard in the first place, and on top of that, we've seen the result of that, which is very, very few terrorist attacks in the country, right? Operating within the paradigm that there should be a ban, that my solution would be add more countries and don't ban anyone indefinitely. My actual solution would be don't ban any country for any amount of time, period. But look into the vetting process, up it, flag certain countries, flag the 7 countries if you want, flag the 10 countries that I proposed. That's totally justified. But if you think that the solution to our national security issues is letting millions of refugees die, then I'm sorry, that's not the solution that I'm on board with. And that's not the solution I don't think any rational person should be on board with. So to summarize, don't ban any countries, especially not indefinitely. Make sure the vetting process is even stronger, because I'm sure there's always room for improvement. And the actually something I mentioned yesterday, which is make sure that when they come here, they're educated. Make sure that when the people come here, their kids are thrown in the schooling system so they can assimilate, so they can grow up as Americans. You keep their diversity, keep their different perspectives, but make sure that they hold the values we hold dear in their hearts as well.
I can get on board with pretty much all of that. I don't really disagree that... I do disagree that a temporary ban, as it's been called, is okay in the sense, whereas if you get things done, if you completely reestablish the vetting process so not one person will get through, I think there is an argument that can be justified. In the grand scheme of things, I do not think there should be across-the-board ban whatsoever. Now, you're saying save the lives of 1 million people. We cannot accept 1 million people into this country from Syria, especially within this short time.
What did we do? 100,000? That's last year. Was Obama saying 100,000?
It's something, and Hillary was on board to increase that.
Okay, 100,000. Fine, let's take that as a starting point. In 10 years, that's 1 million people, right? Now, think about the kids that are going to be born in those 10 years. That's not just 1 million people. That's 1.2 million people, 1.1 million people, given the growth of population.
I'm not going to argue kids being in the U.S. shouldn't be...
No, I'm saying that if we don't... let's say if we don't accept those 1 million people over the next 10 years, that's not just 1 million people. That's 1 million plus all the people who are born.
Millions and millions of generations is what you're saying.
Well, I was talking more short term, but that's actually another great point that I should have mentioned.
Dang it.
Which is, in the long term, you're saving millions of lives because they have kids, and their kids have kids, and you're giving them better lives.
Then we get to the point again is where the line where it becomes moral. Because if we accept everyone...
No, you can't accept
and we talked about that last episode. Go check it out, guys. Now, we've focused on this whole idea of a solution. And solving the refugee crisis is probably the smallest issue that we've had in the past God knows how many years in the Middle East. I mean, it's been issue after issue after issue, and I think we're the ones to blame. I mean, we become involved in the Middle East, and then there's always an issue after that. Now, the question I have for you is, it's a big question. How do we mend ties in the Middle East? This is the only reason why the refugee crisis is even happening, because all of the chaos in the Middle East, and the only reason people aren't open arms to allowing Syrian refugees to come in is because of the historical context of past terrorism and sort of the whole how the media and historically the Middle East has been portrayed.
So the question is, how do we mend the ties?
How do we mend our ties with the Middle East? And let's look at that in a Western perspective rather than just the U.S. Because
okay, so first thing is, from a broad perspective, a kind of grand strategy perspective, is to stop messing around with them. We should take the stance that the U.S. took in the Cold War, one of containment, right? Prevent things like this from happening. Prevent civil wars and state collapses from happening in the future. Prevent terrorism from spreading into other countries or from coming overseas. But if there's a civil war in Libya, that's none of your concern. If there's a civil war in Syria, that's none of your concern. Once it starts getting to a vast humanitarian violence, like gas is being used, or God forbid biological warfare, then that's a global thing that has to be dealt with. That's a human rights violation. The UN gets involved. That's a different issue. But if there is a civil war, because there's bound to be another civil war in the next 10 years in the Middle East. It's
100%. Tomorrow it could happen.
Probably. But the U.S. and a lot of Western nations, but they all follow the U.S.'s lead anyways, is to get the hell out of that region. Stop messing around with it. Take a stance of containment. Prevent any further spread. Not, don't throw boots on the ground all the time. Every 2 presidential terms, you'll need another freaking war. But don't allow it to spread. And don't allow it to spread in that you don't let it to cross borders, all that. But more importantly, stay out of their business most of the time. It's none of your concern. And because every time we go in, even if we think it's a just war like Afghanistan, the people always hate us. And that's just a fact. And they could be wrong, they could be right. But the fact of the matter is, they will always hate the country occupying them. We could have prevented a small little village in Iraq from being captured by ISIS and having the husbands being thrown into slavery and the women from being raped and the kids from being raised into this toxic and poison ideology. But they don't know that. All they know is now all these green men from over the seas who speak a funny language are coming in and sleeping in our homes or sleeping next to us and telling us what to do and managing the state of affairs of our little village that we were fine before. That's what they see. And that only helps spread the terrorism. So whenever one thing goes wrong, whenever a kid is accidentally shot or it runs in the line of fire or something like that, you just create another family of terrorists. And that's how terrorism spreads. So get the hell out of the region, prevent any further spreading, and focus on domestic issues.
No.
So that's the big picture. That's how we, from a long-term perspective, mend wounds with the Middle East and let democracy come out naturally. Because democracy that has not been fought for, democracy that has not been, argued over and wars have been fought over it and, constitutions were signed, democracies that don't arise through those means don't last. There's a reason the United States has the longest standing constitutions, because we fought for it and we said, hey, this constitution takes priority over everything else. Western democracies have a similar tenet, okay? But if you start forcing the democracy on them, they're going to only hate you. And you're not going to be solving any issues. Stop with the country building. Stop with the wars and the terrorism and all that, the terrorism-motivated occupations. Get out of the region. And that's the big picture. More specifically, and this is going to seem completely insignificant to the grandiose conjecture that I was just spewing like 5 seconds ago, but start giving out more H-1B visas. The H-1B visas, I know, it sounds like it's big picture yeah, but this is a more specific, something that can happen tomorrow. Start giving out H-1B visas, which are the visas given out to highly skilled workers. So these are the guys going into academia, these are the guys going to Wall Street, these are the guys going to Silicon Valley. Give out more visas.
That just seems logical to me, though. I can't see that America isn't doing that already.
No, there is a huge popular sentiment against, hey, why is Silicon Valley giving these high-paying jobs to the Chinese and the Indians and the Pakistanis? Like, what the hell? Give it to Americans. America first, right? All that rhetoric's being spewed, especially the past year and a half. That's BS. We want the best man to get the job, or woman to get the job. We want the best man or woman to work for the Googles, to work for the Stanfords and the Harvards and the Princetons, and that's how our country has thrived. the United States of America has gone so far over the past hundreds of years because we were a nation of immigrants. We were a nation that said, if you are hungry, if you are smart, if you are dedicated, you get your butt over here and we're going to give you a job and you're going to do great things for us and for your family. But the second people start spewing a populist rhetoric against countries like China, Japan, and more specifically in regards to this topic, countries in the Middle East, then all of a sudden, everything that made the country great is going right out the window. So if you start allowing people from those countries who are banned, or more broadly, countries from the Middle East, to, hey, if you have some education under your belt, or if you want to come over here to study at the Harvards and Princetons and Yales of the country, if you're good enough to do that, come on over. Here's a visa. We're going to welcome you with open arms.
There's no way I can't see America's has already put something in place for that. I'm pretty sure almost every single country. Canada definitely has it. I know Australia definitely has it. The skilled workers permits. Now,
but the amount is
so probably small. Could definitely be improved. Now, the whole idea that you were talking about before is let democracy naturally rise. Mm-hmm. We talked about it last episode, but there's a huge difference between Western and Middle Eastern cultures in the sense where I don't think democracy would ever naturally rise in their culture. It would be a more monarchy sort, and secularism would never happen either. It's always going to be integrated into society. It obviously can be argued because it's such a wild
statement. That's the point of the show. We're supposed to argue it.
a wild statement, but I definitely think that, and it's not even a bad. Maybe it's not even a bad thing. Maybe that is how that culture is supposed to be. They did that for thousands upon thousands of years. Now, naturally, democracy rised out of our cult, like the British culture that started off as a monarchy.
Right.
Now, either that was very delayed in the Middle East, or it may have never happened. We don't really have. Every single time the government has changed in the Middle East, it's because of foreign intervention. The only and I know Egypt is in Africa, but for instance, the democracy of Egypt, that didn't happen overnight. That happened because of the whole Suez crisis and the international influence of like Nasser being brought into power. That he pretty much started off as a puppet. Now, I agree in the sense that less intervention is better. I think it's for different reasons, though. America hasn't won a single war since World War II. Before Vietnam, we lost. Afghan, we can pretty much say that we lost.
I disagree with those.
You think we won Vietnam?
No, not Vietnam. No, not Vietnam. Korea, first of all. That was... Okay, without the U.S. intervention, there would be one Korea, and it would be not the good Korea. It would be the bad Korea. The Gulf War was a slaughter. You can talk about the morality of it, but my God, the U.S. just went to town there.
But all those can be argued that...
Iraq, complete success. I mean, the result was not good, but as the war stood itself, complete success. Afghanistan, Al-Qaeda was contained. Al-Qaeda barely became a threat after Afghanistan.
Then ISIS was created because we decided to pull out a freaking overnight.
But that's not because the war itself was won. You can say that, hey, let's say you're German, right? And or you're talking about a German from the American perspective after World War II. You say, hey, success, we got them, we liberated everyone, great. But then Germany was cut in half. And that was a result because of the Yalta Convention, and the Soviet Union took the eastern side of Germany. And those state of affairs is obviously a bad state of affairs, but it was a result of World War II. But it was World War II a win or a loss for the German people? Or the ideals of democracy for the German people? It's a definite win. Just because the results are bad does not mean you can say the war was not won.
A win, in my book, is complete... I guess, if you talk about it in terms... If you go down to a technicality, yes, we won a few, but the Bay of Pigs, the Cuban Missile Crisis, North Korea, every single thing we've gotten into, it's ended in some disaster. Agent Orange of the Vietnam War, we may have technically won those, but we either created something worse... Like, we pretty much created what North Korea is in today, that it's contained, that it's isolated, that there's little foreign intervention, and they're just feeding off of China.
It's hypothetical. If
We're getting off topic anyway. We're going into wars that America have won. Other than that, let's just agree to disagree. The point that I was trying to make is that foreign intervention hasn't worked out perfectly as, let's say, World War II did. The U.S. comes in for 6 months... wins the Second World War.
Okay, 6 months. Hello, come on. It was like 4 years. It was December 7th, 1941.
You guys were not as involved as any of those people.
You're talking about World War II, not one.
Okay, whatever.
World War II? Are you forgetting there was another war on the Pacific? Are we just forgetting that now?
Okay. Well,
World War I maybe, but alright. Anyways.
Okay, let me get to my point. Foreign intervention hasn't worked out perfectly for the U.S.
Okay.
Now, especially in the Middle East, since the mandate system in the 1920s, every single time we've got involved into the Middle East, we've caused divisions. And they were it's like the American Indian, the Native Americans. Holy smoke! Now they were living perfectly in peace. They were primitive in a sense, but they were living completely peacefully. We come in, completely throw the thing out of whack. It just happens that America managed to pretty much annihilate the entire native population. That's their goal was to feed off in the 1920s was to feed off the oil in the Middle East. The whole Suez crisis. We've pretty much caused the whole instability in the region. Before that, it was just it was primitive. Fine. It's not fine though.
No, I'm saying I agree. We've established that foreign intervention is not most of the time is not a positive. But now, I think the point of divergence between us is that you think that democracy is never going to emerge out of these cultures.
I'm not even saying if that's a bad thing. Maybe it's not suited for those cultures.
No, I would totally disagree with you. I would totally disagree.
You think that democracy is infallible?
Do I think absolutely not? Look at the crap that the U.S. has done in the past few years. Oh my goodness! People are listen. In the wise words of someone that I know who's dear to my heart, people are stupid. Okay,
I can agree with that.
People are very stupid. That means democracy is going to be very stupid at times too. But Winston Churchill said, "Yeah, paraphrasing here. Democracy, yeah, it's not the best thing. It doesn't always give you the best results, but it's the best thing we have."
But then why force the Middle East into it?
I'm saying we shouldn't force the Middle East,
or let it.
What I'm saying is that the Middle East, I think, inevitably will get there. Now, the way I view it is that humanity has a general trend to progress. Right? We will progress forward. We will have huge down periods, the Middle Ages. But you have huge up periods that overcompensate for the negatives.
Like the Enlightenment.
And the Renaissance and all of that. Now, given the opinion, I guess, that humanity progresses forward, and along with the opinion that democracy is the best of all possible systems, and we'll argue that in a second, the logical conclusion is that humanity inevitably progresses towards democracy. What comes after that? Socialism, communism, that's not a discussion for today. We're talking straight democracy. I think, given the assumption that humanity progresses, and given the assumption that democracy is the best of all currently known systems, and we're not going to talk about communism because it's very complicated. Given those two assumptions, the natural conclusion is that all people will progress towards democracy. I mean,
Marxism does say that the progression that from a monarchy it will progress into a democracy, and then it goes on from there into different things.
Yeah, but
maybe they would naturally progress into it. I think it would be definitely delayed, and even if you had let them to be, it would have definitely been delayed. If it were to happen, I'm not going to say it's not going to happen, but it's definitely delayed, and it's definitely not at the rate the West would. Well, even historically, it's not the rate the West would have been, and it wouldn't be the rate that we would think it would be. I think it would be a lot more delayed. Now,
details.
Now, from that, not getting involved in the Middle East, do you think that's just that? How long do you think that's going to take to sort of come into effect? Because it's a long-term issue that we've created.
No, this is a generational fight. This is the Cold War of our generation, right? How do we beat the Soviet Union without going to war? Right? It's a hard question to answer. The answer was roughly a combination of things. I'm not going to claim to have the answer to such a complex topic, but it was containment and economic spending, and eventually Reagan outspent the Soviet Union with nuclear arms. And that was part of the reason, not the whole thing, but that was part of the reason. So it's a very complex, very long-term, generational issue. The same thing with the war on terror. This is something that we have to do something similar with the Cold War's approach, the Americans' approach on the Cold War, that is, which is containment. And then on top of that, get out of the region, let them deal with their own crap. That's not for us to decide. And then again, on the short term, you have gestures of good faith, H-1B visas, maybe free trade agreements with Saudi Arabia or Pakistan. I don't know. I'm just spitballing here. But at the very least, I think the visa idea is a solid one. But more broadly, short-term gestures of good faith, such as the visa program, and long-term grand strategy, such as containment, I believe are the solution that Trump should be aiming towards. Because remember, we're talking about solutions to what we would have done for this not Muslim ban, well, it could be a Muslim ban, depends on your take, on this immigration ban. What's the solution I propose? And my solution is exactly what I just proposed, which is focus on the grand strategy of containment, get out of the region, and offer gestures of good faith, because he completely screwed up. My
issue with your containment argument is that you're specifically against the ban, but in order to do the containment, how every single country, how America stopped the spread of communism, one of their main ways was to ban travel. The whole Cuba, it was just finally levied the travel ban. Like that's how America's done it in the past, and the only way to really do containment, I think it needs to be completely passive. Our involvement in the Middle East, because
you're saying completely hands off, don't even touch it.
It would be the role that Canada takes, in the sense where help out the UN, in the sense where give the UN some money, and then that's it. Accept people, like your visa, increase the amount of visas. That's a good thing. Immigration is always a good thing, and it's sort of.
No, listen. It's very easy to say that as a Canadian yourself, but as an American, someone who's followed the news for not obviously I'm still young, so not that long, but long enough. It is so frustrating that countries that are not the United States say, "Hey, what the hell are you doing policing the world?" And then whenever something happens, like, America, where are you? It's you can never win it. So it's easy to say, "Hey, take your hands off completely," not some kind of containment where you're still little hands off here and there.
So you agree with the ban, or no?
No. Hold on, let me finish this thought. It's very easy to say, take a Canadian approach, don't be completely hands off, instead of what I'm proposing, which is like kind of hands on, hands off, but mostly hands off, and just accept refugees as they come. How about the UN? That's easy to say when you're not the leading global superpower.
But change the narrative then. Why does the narrative have to always be the same? Do it a few times where you just take a passive involvement, and everyone's going to... Imagine if America had influence from a passive standpoint, but was thought of so highly as people think of Sweden and Norway and Finland and Canada. I can't name a country in the world that hates any of those places.
No, there's an issue with that. And the issue is that the United States, since 1945, has built up the most complicated and strong web of alliances that any country, any empire in the history of the world has ever built up. And to take a hands-off approach to global affairs, given that position, is to de facto say, hey, we don't care about all the progress we've built up in regards to keeping our place in the world. We're just going to let the world play out as it sees fit. Now, you might say, okay, that's good. Let every country deal with themselves. But the second the U.S. pulls out of a region, guess who's coming in? Russia, China. Those countries are coming in because they want to establish a global order. I believe it is a much better state of affairs. It is a much better state of affairs if the United States is a dominant power in most of the world's regions than if Russia or if China did. The second we pull out from the Middle East, guess who sweeps in? Russia. That's what's happening in Syria right now. All the ceasefire negotiations are ran primarily by Syria and secondarily by the United States. Now, in that case, you can make an argument that that's probably better. You want to keep our hands clean and all of that. But from a broader perspective, you cannot just retreat to isolationism like Trump and a lot of the populists nowadays would have you believe is the right thing to do.
But since when has America become the non-innovator, the one that just lays back on past alliances that they formed? The only reason why we have America today, and what you're proposing right now, is that we live off alliances built back in the past.
No, I'm saying we preserve the alliances. If you retreat into your own borders, then guess what? All of those alliances, all of those military bases, the economic ties, all of that dissipates over time. Because if you're not putting the effort in to protect what you've built over the past, 65, 75 years, then it goes away and someone else swoops in.
So you think Sweden has no alliances? Singapore. So the other day, it was completely unrelated to this research. I was looking up the most powerful passports, because you have a bunch of passports, and right. you can go pretty much anywhere in the world.
Yeah.
Now, I think Singapore and Sweden and Norway were like the three high...
I think Germany's up there.
Germany's pretty high, too. That can travel to the most places in the world off a single passport.
Right.
And it's something like 170 countries, somewhere close there. I think the exact number might have been 164.
A lot.
So are you saying that alliances like that don't matter? The U.S. only barely gets you anywhere without a visa.
Okay, you're not going...
Now, it's a powerful passport,
you're not getting into Afghanistan, and you're going to have a tough time getting into Pakistan.
No,
that's fine.
I'm saying without a visa. You can't even get to Canada without a visa.
No, you can...
For long term.
Long term,
yeah.
Right. But the statistic you're quoting is not long term, it's visiting. So, now if you want to say, okay, if the U.S. took a hands-off approach and kind of washed their hands...
I'm not saying wash their hands. Whoa.
We're
of military ties. I don't think there's any issue. Like, I'm not saying throw away economic ties or whatever, and that's not what... In turn, you might be doing that in some places militarily.
Okay, fine, but it seems... You're totally right. We're talking military, not free trade versus complete economic isolationism, so that's a fair point. But regardless, you're saying the benefit of being militarily isolationist is the fact that you can travel to more countries. I get that you're probably not saying that's the only benefit, but I mean, come on, that is not a bit... The reason that people in the States and a lot of people outside of the States argue for American intervention more often than not, or at least more than none at all, is because if America is the one calling the shots, broadly speaking, and in general terms, the world is much better off that way. There's been not one major war since World War II. And it's because, first, the Soviet Union and the United States were the only big superpowers at the time, compared to back then when it was Germany, France, the UK, and all their empires, and a little bit of the Netherlands, and right? But then after World War II, it was just the States and the Soviet Union. And they didn't care about any of the other countries. They had micro-wars here and there. But most of the time, they had their missiles pointed at each other. Once the Soviet Union collapsed, it was just the States. And there has been no conflict. Because the United States kept things in check, and the Soviet Union was focused on the United States. But now, without the Soviet Union, the United States is keeping things in check. There's been one of the least appreciated benefits from the United States military is the merchant marines. Without the United States' ridiculously large military, there would be no free transport of trade across the oceans. Now, I'm using that as an analogy, and I want to extrapolate a little bit out of that to the conclusion that when the United States is the one that is calling the shots in a lot of the places of the world... Now, again, I want to emphasize that countries do what they want most of the time, but I'm saying, the U.S. should be involved. If out of any of the countries...
The U.S. is sort of the governing body of the world. Is that what you're getting at?
I'm saying it should be the country that if anyone gets involved for any circumstance, it should be the States. We shouldn't pull in completely within our borders, our militaries, that is. Now, the conclusion I'm reaching is that the United States being in that position, as opposed to being isolated militarily speaking, leads to a much better state of affairs for the entire world than not. Now, I want to emphasize again, the degree to which the U.S. is involved overseas is not okay. It is far too much on one side of the spectrum. We have to tone that back significantly. We cannot have an Iraq. We cannot have an Afghanistan. We cannot have a Gulf War, a freaking Vietnam. We can't have those every few years. That's unacceptable. It destabilizes regions. It does not solve any problems in the long term, and it's a drain on the economic and military resources of the United States. But that does not mean we should retreat within our borders completely.
So my side is that that we shouldn't have military intervention. What degree of military intervention do you think there should be in the Middle East then, or around the Middle East to do the so-called containment?
I think a good strategy for containment is something that Obama was doing with ISIS, which is once ISIS stopped being the JV team and Obama started taking it seriously, and he was sticking to his guns of not putting boots on the ground. I think he largely did that. I'm not sure about how many boots, if any, were put on the ground. But by and large, he stuck to the drones. Sticking to a strategy of drone strikes to aid the forces on the ground, like the Kurds and the Iraqis, to fight their own wars, but we just help tilt the scales a little bit in their favor. That's a good approach to containment. We're not throwing boots on the ground, because that's that. When you remember, we talked about this. When you throw boots on the ground, the local people start hating you for whatever reason, even if they're wrong. They start hating you for reasons.
What about providing munitions?
Providing munitions is super tricky because the only examples I can think of are in Syria. And who the hell gets the munitions? You don't know if it's the good rebels or the bad rebels. And the good rebels are pretty much, they don't exist anymore.
What about training? This is what Obama was doing towards the
training.
End. He was doing training and...
If you want to train the Kurds with the Iraqis, absolutely, but don't start sending over...
Well, we've banned Iraq now.
Right, that's why
ridiculous.
That's why I'm not in favor of this. So you raise a great point of should we send munitions? No, because that just land. Every time we've done that in the past, it's gone in the hands of Al Qaeda or ISIS. You have ISIS running around with U.S. tanks on the streets. Okay, that's us, and that was our screw up. Okay, in regards to training, yes, there are some boots on the ground, not for fighting purposes, non-military, of course. And train the Kurds, train the Iraqis, train the third group of people that are inevitably going to be the center of the next Middle Eastern conflict. Train them. And then when the wars actually start breaking out, send some missiles in. And for God's sake, do not just send them in and destroy Doctors Without Borders hospitals. That's ridiculous.
I was going to do one like that, and then, oh my God.
More oversight has got to be put in place. That's insane. That is a... Oh.
Okay, now, do you think it's more dangerous to give them money or give them munitions? Because in the past, Obama, like for instance, for the whole Iraq nuke thing, it was Iraq, right?
What do you mean, the nuclear deal?
Yeah, the nuclear deal. Iran. They sent over $150 billion in U.S. cash over there.
Well, it's part of a
and
treaty.
so that still whatever. But I'm saying if they wanted to provide munitions or money,
no, but Iran doesn't want munitions. Now, it's dangerous because Iran's going to send that right to their...
There's no way they couldn't use some munitions.
Those unmarked bills. And this is highlighting the importance of getting your news from the right and the left, because the left was not covering the fact that these were unmarked bills, or the fact that there was being money sent over at all for like the first few days of this controversy. This was a while ago, 2016. But back to the central question of, should we send money or munitions? I don't think we should send munitions, and I don't think we should send money. The U.S. does not...
I can get on board with that.
Page? I think we're on the same... We should disagree on more on foreign policy, but I think... Actually, I feel like this highlights more...
If you go down to the nitty-gritty, though, most of the time we're gonna agree on core issues, because if you think about it objectively and logically, the conclusion's pretty obvious.
You have to... No, this is important. This is what I wanted to say a second ago, which is... I think this highlights the fact that foreign affairs, foreign issues, non-domestic policies, they used to be almost unanimous within the states. There used to be consensus on this. But now, we live in such a hyper-polarized society where you demonize the other, you hate the other side, you ad hominem the attack on the other guys because you hate them, their ideology's wrong, they're bigots if they don't agree with you, or they're snowflake liberals if they don't agree with you.
It's an all or nothing society.
To the point where the things that used to have consensus, like foreign affairs, now no longer have consensus. But the second two people sit down and what I hope is rational discourse with, factual and reason and logically based arguments, you tend to converge again, because that's the way it used to be, and I think it used to be that way because back then we weren't as polarized. So this is the importance of dialogue. This is the importance of listening to the other, and this is the whole philosophy, the whole spirit of the podcast. The second you start listening to people, you realize, hey, my side's not right all the time. His side's right sometimes. And you take two different worldviews, two different opinions, and you converge.
That's exactly what this is all about. Our culture is so rooted on this idea that everyone is right, and everyone can have their own opinion, and everyone can get their own first place ribbon, and everyone can be right. Now, in theory, that's a good idea, but then when you do throw this at human nature, you just create this whole polarization. Because no one's really allowed to jump the stream or jump across the stream without being criticized. The stream just gets wider and wider, and everyone just separates further and further. What I want anybody to get from this podcast is not to listen to me or to listen to you and just take some form of our opinion. I just want them to look at more opinions and just to think. It seems sort of logical and maybe a little bit cheesy even in a sense. Just think about things critically. If you see something on CNN, don't just take that as blatant fact. Mm-hmm. Now, don't take anything on Fox News as blatant fact either. Just be more inclusive of everything, of any opinion,
information,
even if
ideas.
You think they're completely ridiculous, even if you think they're way out there crazy. They may have something to their argument. Now, to conclude this, we got it wasn't even off track, but we got a really wide perspective on this.
Right, we stepped back
so
a few pages.
We're sort of concluding that less intervention, some military intervention in the form of containment rather than aggressive military intervention in the sense of like just throwing ourselves in the middle of Libya for no reason. Stuff like that.
To tie that in with the idea of what the whole spirit of the immigration ban, which is national security, it's important to mention that if you start containing and you get out of the region, you're going to get less terrorist threats. Because you're no longer pissing people off in the region and you're no longer motivating and fueling the fire for people to hate your country.
Exactly.
So that's if it wasn't clear before, that's the reason we should take a stance of containment. Not just because it'll help the Middle East simmer down a little bit, but also from a more selfish perspective, it reduces or will reduce the amount of threats that the United States and other Western democracies will face.
Definitely. Now, so get out of there militarily, do some form of containment. Economically, only do support through containment. So don't be throwing things at one side. Help a little out with training. Sort of do the Obama-esque approach to it.
Train, don't send munitions, because I will never go in the right hands.
Yeah, anything with a "Made in the USA" label, not a good idea to throw in the middle of the Middle East right now.
Right. Yeah.
So, to sum all this up, what do you think should happen with the travel ban? Thrown out the window? That's where I think you're sort of...
my solution, if I could summarize...
Is to throw it out the window?
My solution is... Well, first... No, I would say do nothing, because the courts are going to throw it right up in his face and it's going to piss him off, and I want to see that happen. I want to see the Twitter meltdown. But from a more objective perspective...
See you in court!
From a more objective perspective, there should be no ban. There should definitely be no indefinite ban. I don't even see I don't see a strong justification for a temporary ban. What we should do is increase the vetting, if it's not already ridiculously scrupulous as is, which it is, but, can't hurt to try. And focus on extending an olive branch to these countries. We screwed up at... I think Iran just reciprocated some sort of ban. I should know the details, unfortunately I don't. But Iran reciprocates some sort of ban on Americans to kind of counter us. So they're only hating us more, right? So the solution, get rid of the ban. No temporary ban. Definitely no indefinite ban. Extend an olive branch to these countries in the sense of offering more visas, especially for the skilled workers, because that's where the state, from a selfish perspective, benefits the most. I think that was mostly the gist of it.
That seems pretty comprehensive to me, Kristen. Agree with a lot of it. I disagree in the sense that it's a good idea to have some form of a ban. The way Trump went about it was completely stupid. The little nicks in the ban where it had some ties to religion, terrible idea. Doing something about vetting, I think there's a huge argument that even though that vetting is very extreme right now, that more vetting isn't a bad thing. If he's able to speed up the process with increasing the volume, but also increasing the severity of vetting, I don't think that's a bad idea. If you're increasing vetting to the point where no one really ends up coming over, or you have to end up waiting 3 years, I think that's completely ridiculous. Now, it needs to be approached in such a way where it's a lot more delicate in the sense of it's a very touchy subject. You're affecting the lives of a million people. You're affecting the loved ones of millions of people. We've accepted so many people over from that region, and now their family members aren't able to visit them. And if they go and visit their family members, there's a likelihood that they're not coming back. Right. I think that's disgraceful that he touched it and that he threw out this executive order with so little concern for what it would cause. And then being so unavailable afterwards.
So you would still have the ban?
I would have some form of it in the sense where it would be more comprehensive or less comprehensive in the sense where it would be more targeted.
More comprehensive for the vets, and then less, I guess, inclusive for the countries affected.
Yeah, and more pinpointed, because we're not having vast immigration from Libya right now, or Somalia. It's the Somali pirates driving out on little boats trying to take over ships right now at this point. It's completely unorganized. The only places that have organized terrorism, I think Saudi Arabia should still really be out of it, because we're the number one trading partner.
I disagree.
And you have a completely valid point. I'm thinking more from Trump's perspective and the U.S. economy's perspective, where we rely a lot on them. And I'm sure vetting still will increase for people coming from those countries. Other than that, I think we agree with a lot of things, and then we've come to some.
We've converged.
We've converged to some pretty solid. We've converged to some pretty solid conclusions here. Now, if you guys disagree with us, let us know down in the comments below. By no means are we right in this, so you shouldn't take what we're saying. Well, you should take it as fact, but it's okay if you guys disagree because we're not going to convince you all to be right.
Think for yourselves is the conclusion here.
Think for yourselves, definitely.
Tip of the day. Think for yourselves.
Tip of the day. Once again, let us know in the comments down below. If any of you want to come on the podcast, you can also message me directly. If you want to catch up with any of us on Twitter, for instance, I have Christian's information in the link. If you search up Opinion Overhaul on pretty much anything, YouTube, SoundCloud, iTunes, Google Play, you'll be able to find us like that. Thanks you guys for watching. Thanks for coming on the show again, Christian. This has been another episode of Opinion Overhaul. Thanks, you guys.
Thanks.